Testing. Om Haranmaye Parikoshe Virajan Brahmaniskalam Tachu Brahm Jyotisham Jyoti Tadyadatma Vido Vidduhu. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Shining like burnished gold, highest and deepest, the core intelligence of living beings, partless and indivisible, ever pure and free of all taint. The essence in all things which all beings seek, either knowingly or unknowingly, there shines Brahman. It is that which the Guru teaches. It is that which the wise ones exult in. Om peace, peace, peace. Om yam brahma varnandra ruda marutaha stunvanti devoid Vedai Sangapada Krama Upanishadoi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyana Vashtita Tadgatena Manasha Pashanti Yam Yogino Yashantam Navidduhu Sura Suragana Devaya Tasmai Namaha. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Our eternal salutations to that one who is the truth of life and existence, and whom the saints and sages call by various names. Our eternal salutations to that one whose glories are sung in the different scriptures of the various religious traditions of the world, but whose infinite and undying grandeur no mortal mind can comprehend. Our eternal salutations to the one upon whom the devotees meditate in the shrine of their hearts, realizing an ineffable presence in their deepest contemplations. May he prompt our minds toward the path of truth and righteousness. May she reveal herself into our souls and dispel the gloom of death, fear, doubt, and darkness. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karbhavahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishovahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings, and may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Here's our second class this weekend at the time of Sri Ramakrishna's birthday, which is February. And we also have other beautiful holy days in this early part of the year. We had celebrated Swami Vivekananda's birthday last month, and Swami Turiyananda's, and Swami Adbhutananda's birthday, Saraswati Puja, the goddess of art and learning. That's a holy day that's coming. So we follow a different calendar than the world. It's a holy calendar that our life is predicated upon, where we look forward to these holy days which the saints and seers worship. And in that way we set our clocks. That is, you might say, march to the beat of a different drummer. And it's not just a psychological measure, but it's an actual fact that it puts you in a different time zone, if you will. I just came from Hawaii, where it's 2 hours different, and tried to set my clock, and it wouldn't set right. So I have to remember that time is relative. And Sri Ramakrishna, in fact, used to say about people who thought their own religion was the only true religion, he said, everyone thinks their own watch keeps the only right time. But he says, you have to check your watch with the sundial, with the sun. So that means you always have to check in with the time that's kept by Lord Shiva, because Lord Shiva is Trikala Darshi. He's the master of the three phases of time. 3 phases of time means past, present, future. Wonderfully enough, he's also the master of the eternal moment, which is a gateway that has 6 doors that you pass through into yoga. 6 inner doors. It's wonderful teaching in yoga that most of us in the West don't know anything about, because we're fixated with hatha, or physical yoga. But jnana yoga is superlative, and then it gets accompanied by Raja yoga, which is meditation. So we had that in this scripture yesterday. It said dhyana and jnana. Remember that sloka we read? So you have jnana, you have wisdom. That is not apara vidya, which is science and mathematics and arts and those things. Those are lower knowledge. Those are fine. The angas, I call them, the 6 lower limbs of knowledge. But there's this paravidya, which is supreme knowledge, which you might say is restricted to only the knowledge of Brahman, or the knowledge of divine reality. That's how the soul checks its watch with supreme reality, what time it is. Beyond time, because one has to meditate upon one's ideal. Like, say, if it were Shiva, then you would meditate upon Lord Shiva and have his darshan, which means all the gods and goddesses are in you. Jesus said, my Father's mansion has many chambers. So he means each one of those chambers is a loka, or a realm inside the mind. Because where else would the kingdoms of heaven be? We haven't found them outside or up. Well, they must be inside. And probably they're your dreams, or heaven states. You go beyond waking into dream state if your dreams are more and more clear. That is, if you awaken your consciousness. Chaitanya whole, Sri Ramakrishna used to say. He would say, may your consciousness be awakened. So then your third eye would open, and you'd be living at a higher state of awareness all the time. And then you'd understand things like God never sleeps. A man has come to me from a land that never sleeps. Now all my dreams have become radiant meditations. It's a song in India. My teacher used to quote that all the time. He liked that very much. All my dreams have become radiant meditations. So as you increase your awareness, then your state of consciousness, you could say the quality of your consciousness refines. It's not that consciousness changes at all, but you have to change your mind to accommodate consciousness. We can't accuse Brahman or speak of Brahman in terms of change. It's changeless. And that's a rule of thumb in spiritual life. Every great seer or luminary will tell you that. So you have to, that's again measuring your own individual timepiece by the sun of knowledge. And so the higher knowledge is paravidya, but you could say that there's a bridge between lower wisdom and higher wisdom, and that's what we're doing today. It's called dharma, and or jnanam. This is what the Upanishad. Buddhism borrowed the term dharma from the Sanskrit. So you think of it more in terms of that, but that word has been there since the earliest time. In fact, the philosophy of India is called Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana means eternal, and Dharma means true religion, you might say. Not irreligion that's masquerading, but true religion. That which the seers live by. It's their very life force, it's their very thinking, it's their everything about them is based on that. So then we would have a calendar too, a spiritual calendar that we live by, certain holy days we observe and so forth. This is the same in every religion, but sometimes these can become rather mundane observances. They have to be infused with life and spirit. You have to breathe life into everything, just like if you get a mantra from a teacher, then you have to breathe life into it. Otherwise, Holy Mother said, repeating the mantra every day is like digging the dry earth with a spade. Very boring. But it is simple, though, for people who don't have a lot of wherewithal or a lot of time to put into their spiritual life. Sadhana, we call it, practice. And the mantra is a very good practice, but you have to infuse it with life. We'll look at that a little bit today in terms of Saraswati. We said her birthday is this month, so she's the Vak Devi. Vak means word. So she's in every word. And that's what we don't realize in the West. We read words and we just take in the outer meaning of the knowledge, but we don't understand that she's actually the meaning in every word. And she's the power in our minds to help us understand the meaning in the word. And she's also much else beyond that. She's beyond words. So words are very important and crucial for one's spiritual development. The mind may not be the Atman, but you have to use it, Holy Mother said, at the state you're in right now, to open the door to Brahman. And use the mind to go inward. So you're going to need to get a hold of that life force, which is called psychic prana, and take it inward. And that way the senses will leave off their attachment to the objects. The Father of Yoga's saying the senses look around and they catch on objects. You see, oh, I like that one. Oh, I don't like that one. So attachment and aversion keeps you from going deep, keeps you on the surface of things. The surface is where death is granted its fishing ground. There's a song in India again. Oh, mind, you're just a little sparkling fish, sporting in the shallows of relativity, where death is granted his fishing ground. Quick, before death comes with his net to fetch you, dive deep into the depths of reality where death can't reach you. So the mind has to dive deep, using all sorts of metaphors and analogies and songs and poems and scriptures in Vedanta to try and convince the soul to go deep inside of itself, because it's caught on all the hooks, you see, of various objects. Shyamakrishna used to call that women in gold. See, a man gets caught in women in gold. It means worldly women and attachment to wealth. See. But just like there's aparavidya and paravidya, there's also vidya shakti and avidya shakti. So if you find a woman or a man finds a man who is vidya, that means they're infused with knowledge, then they can both together work their way toward the goal. That's called pativrata in India. The divine couple, they work their way toward the goal. But otherwise, they drag each other down to the world. If even one of them is worldly, then it won't go good, according to the Master. And that's probably part of the reason behind all the divorces nowadays. You've got somebody who's got a deeper sensibility and other people who are still attached to the world, and they got together through some karma, and it doesn't work out. So parting and sorrows and heartbreaks and betrayals and things happening in the realm of human relationships. But you're one indivisible self. You're not an individual self, you're an indivisible self. So you should be able to stand on your own 2 feet without the help of any other soul, including me. I'm just reminding you of all this knowledge because it's already within you. And in a time and day like this, then you're not thinking about it, so you want to go find someone who talks about it. See, oh, I remember now. I mean, remembrance is at least 50% of waking up. I said that yesterday in class. Welcome to the live streaming audience. I have students watching from different parts of the world, like Iceland and Hungary and India and around the United States. So yesterday, if you were with us, you heard me say that. So very important to have this contact with someone of a spiritual nature. Holy company, we call it in our tradition. Sadhu, satsanga. A sadhu is someone who spends their time concentrating on God and spiritual things rather than just on the world. What you think you become is a true statement. As Ramakrishna used to say, if a man eats radish, he belches radish. So if you're always thinking about the world and talking about the world, you see, and nothing spiritual ever gets in, so you're that little sparkling fish that's just on the surface of everything, and death is going to come along and swoop you up, and you'll be reborn again. That is, death as non-existence is a myth, see, because you are existence. You can't not exist. Nobody, even in the body, says, I don't exist. Everyone has to affirm I exist, even by the very fact that they had parents. How do you know we exist? Because I had a mother and a dad. And Swami used to say that as a proof of existence. So, yesterday we actually looked into that. And Shankara said, Namrit Jorna Shanka Name Jati Beta and Pita Naiva Me Naiva Matta Majanma. I have no father and I have no mother. And that's said from a very, very high standpoint. Somebody who's realized that they are the sole reality and everything else exists in them. Mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, lovers, haters. Everything is within their own mind. And so when they realize how vast the mind is and how dual it is, how diverse it is, how fractured it is, how scattered it is, then they start to gather. That's how Swami Vivekananda said, first scattered mind, and you realize, your seeds are spread all over the place. So now you want to start gathering, so there's a impetus to start practicing. Sort of like the mirror broke and you're looking for the shards. See, put it all back together again, so you can see yourself in some way, instead of just a splinter. So that's the gathering. And then finally you get concentrated and then fully immersed. There's like 4 or 5 steps of gathering the mind back from its scattered place, according again to the father of yoga, Patanjali. So that was also how we started the scripture yesterday. We reread all the first 9 slokas, which are on the board there, those latest ones when I was here 4 months ago. We took 7, 8, and 9. The first sloka of the Amritabindu, drop of nectar, means, said, mind is of 2 kinds, pure and impure. The pure is invested, is devoid of desire, and the impure is invested with desire. So they put it very, very succinctly and very simply, just one sloka out of the Upanishad. So gets you started on thinking about the mind right away. Vedanta cuts here, they say. See, it wants to go for the throat. It wants to cut off your ignorance right away. Other forms of practice sometimes start with the body, and I have to go forward, and I have to purify my food, and I have to start breathing, get my lungs together. Finally, I have to realize that the lungs don't operate by themselves. Man does not live by bread alone, so I have to get a hold of the prana, and I have to start breathing. And then finally, I have to realize that the mind doesn't think without prana either. So there's a psychic form of that prana, and that's meant to take me inward, and that was short-circuited lifetimes ago. I never really went inside. I just lived a series of lifetimes outside. And so I became acclimatized or accustomed to being a body and considering the world to be real, when that was all a lie. A lie fed you by everyone, including your well-intentioned parents, who never knew themselves either. So all of a sudden you're finding yourself turning away from the external and going to the internal. And you find yourself in the mind, and you find it's rather scattered. Now you have to start gathering it back and learning how to concentrate. Westerners are pretty good at that. So they've found something to concentrate on, but nobody ever told them that they're in samadhi when you're doing your woodwork. You see, in your architecture or something, and it's all flowing good. You're in samadhi. You're in concentration. That's Brahman. Brahman is in everything, like sunlight's in dewdrops. But it's not the dewdrop, because the dewdrop changes. So, where am I going to find the next bit of light? Is what the yogic practitioner is thinking. So the practitioner falls into this idea that he's growing. And that's not right either. Atman doesn't grow. Brahman doesn't grow. So you can't teach your kids you're growing. You have to say your body's growing, but you remain the same. You are the same always, and your years will not change that. Who said that? Moses. One of the most beautiful sayings of Moses in the Jewish tradition. You remain the same always, and your years will not change that. Beautiful. So it's very Vedantic, very Advaitic, very non-dual, and very true that you remain the same, like we said yesterday, witnessing the changes that are going on inside of you. Swami Vivekananda used to say the soul picks up the book, which the soul is sentient, and the book is nature. See, so it reads the book of nature, puts it down. It gathers knowledge from the book of nature, knowledge that it already knew, but it's refreshing itself, like for the next lifetime, and it puts the book down, but the soul never changed one bit as it read through the book of nature. So just like that, you go through lifetime after lifetime, and you're the unchanging witness of it all, but something in your mind is convincing you about the illusion of change. So you think change is real. A great mistake along the path is to assume that. You should always be affirming for yourself, I am Atma Brahma, this self is Brahman, this self is changeless, birthless, deathless, beyond time, beyond space, free of karma, and transcendent of the mind. We used to sing that in various ways too. Shantapa dukkha janako na vidhikadachit Santapa yoga janitam namanhakadachit Yasmaraham kritiriyam nachamekadachit Gyanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham Gyanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham. That's from the Song of the Avadhut, it's called. He says, contemplating my dreamlike past, I found that I never performed the action that brought about suffering. I never owned a mind complex with which to create pleasure and pain. I found that the ego is an onerous phantom, devoid of substance. Thus I concluded, I am not the mind and the ego. I am pure existence, wisdom, bliss, as boundless as the sky, as infinite as space. One of his 40 verses, where he just goes on and on, singing and speaking about his realization at that non-dual level. He lives there. That's where he prefers to dwell. So the dreamlike past, he looked at it, I found it in all that action that caused my karma. I never did that. That wasn't me that did that. It's not like shirking responsibility. Your karma is there, you have to suffer it. But the actuality of the fact is that you thought your karma was real, and you thought your actions were real, so therefore you invested them with some sort of energy that brought about the idea that I'm a finite being, when you never were. So I found that the mind complex that creates pleasure and pain was also not mine. It's not my true self. My true self is pure existence, pure knowledge, pure bliss. And then metaphorically, he says, as boundless as the sky, infinite like space. So these beings exist at this level of consciousness, and they think about it all the time. That's what their minds are spending. When you're watching them or looking at them, you see a holy person, their mind, they're inward, indrawn in their mind. Reminds me of another verse where he sings similar to that. Paragito nabhavami vatsa niryoga yoga rahito nabhavami vatsa nischita chitta rahito nabhavita vatsa gyanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham gyanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham. In similar fashion, then, he sings, "O precious one," he's talking to his student, "I am neither distinct from reality nor brought into union with it. I am not invested with a mind, nor am I devoid of mind. Don't you see? Thought belongs to me, but I am free of it as well. Actually, I am pure existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Boundless is the sky, infinite like space." He always ends that. Gyanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham. He ends every verse with that refrain to accent, the true nature, where he's speaking from and where he exists, and how everything else just revolves around it like planets around a sun. See, he's his own stable center. Everything else is moving and changing around him. So you can sing about these things as well as read about them. And that's what we do when we enter into study. Sometimes a study inspires us, sometimes it makes us tired. And so you have to sit straight back. You have to be at full attention. You have to breathe evenly, eat properly, and get some exercise and practice meditation, and create an atmosphere through which this wisdom can be transmitted to you by a realized soul. Find your teacher and get that transmitted to you. And then take it with you for the rest of your life, or lives, if it may be, until you don't come back anymore to the body. You join the company of the seers. Another beautiful song in India. "Oh, when, O Mother of the Universe, will I be granted the privilege of dancing with Krishna, of singing with Ram, of Gauranga, of Buddha, Moses? When will I be granted their company? When can I enter into their company and be free of all this suffering? Be myself again." Oh, the deepest prayer of an adept practitioner who's already seen the reality and now is making their way towards it to join it, like the Upanishad said yesterday. To the extent that the mind can be merged in the heart, to that extent it gets realized. So it's called Medha Kendra, to merge the mind with the heart. And that's a very high ideal in India. So that, usually in the West we're just all mind at us if we get rid of our stupidity. Then we think we got rid of our stupidity, so now we're wise. No, you're just knowledgeable. But that's lower knowledge that you're invested in. The higher knowledge still remains a mystery to you and a secret. So you have to go to those beings who know that secret. What is that secret? She is the secret. The Divine Mother who exists as the power of the understanding in every word. That's her. Vakdevi. We also sing to her sometimes. Swamini Saraswati Vakdevi Bhagavati Parvati Mampahi Vinapani Hamsavahini Vedanta Rupini Alayamam Swamini Saraswati Vakdevi Bhagavati Parvati Mampahi. So she's Swamini Saraswati Vakdevi. She's the goddess of the word. Bhagavati, Parvati are her names. She's the Lord appearing as the mother, Bhagavati. Parvati, she's the consort of Shiva. Hamsavahini, she rides the swan. That is, the white swan is her vehicle. She wears a white garment. Her skin is white. She sits in the snow mountains, which are white. She's white. She's Sarva Shukla. She's all white goddess. And Vedanta Rupini, the Vedanta is her wisdom that she transmits to everyone. She's Rupini means the form. She's the very form of Vedanta. So that means the form, is in the word. She's the secret form of inside of the word. Each letter bears the secret of her existence. And inside the letter are other particles that make up the letter, just like words and syllables make up pages, and pages make up books, and books make up libraries. And it's infinite either way you look at it, outside or in. You see, it's her wisdom. So when we found out about her when we were 18, 19, our whole perspective changed. We became worshippers of the Mother. The Father God had been misrepresented anyway. Judgmental and warlike and all that. Actually, the Father is transcendent, Brahman. It's genderless. But the Divine Mother has this repository of wisdom that she can give you. And the gurus come out of her, and they pass this wisdom out like nectar. Jnanamritam, nectar. The nectar of wisdom. So we worked our way through 6, 7, 8, and 9. We read the whole 9 yesterday, so I won't do that again. Although not everyone was here, it was very beneficial, but I found out that people liked yesterday's class so much that they're going to post it unedited on YouTube. So you can go up and look at that if you missed it very soon, probably within the next few days. It'll be up there. Usually we wait a while, and we have so much backlog of these live streaming classes that I don't know how many, 60 or 70 of them are already on the YouTube. And those have been added a preface and an ending with music and made to look nice and presentable. But yesterday's we just said, well, just go ahead and mount it up there and let people read it, because Amritabindu Upanishad is transmitting to us some very precious teachings. We ended some of those teachings yesterday by repeating Sloka 10 and teaching from it. The highest truth is that pure consciousness is that pure consciousness which realizes there is neither control of the mind nor its coming into play. I am not bound, nor am I a worshipper. Neither am I a seeker after liberation or one who has attained liberation. All of these thoughts come from somebody who has divorced themselves or have themselves separated from their own self. But it doesn't come from the person who's always centered in the self. They don't have those thoughts. It's just natural to be in that state of not two-ness. When we say oneness in Vedanta, it's not like ekam, the number one in Sanskrit alphabet, you see. It's more like vyapi, all-pervasive oneness. It's one because it's everywhere. It's one because it's indivisible. It's one because it's homogeneous. And that's the nature of your consciousness. It never enters into two-ness. That's the mind that divides it. Mind-ego complex, as he was singing. So if you take on a mind-ego complex, that's one of the risks of embodiment. some people don't even get past the body, which is gross, dense consciousness. But other people who have more wherewithal, they start being very clever and using the mind for this and that, and they start pleasing the ego. My teacher came to the West and he looked at us. He was working amongst the Christians and trying to help them with their present state of their religion. And he said, Christianity I found is a thoroughly dualistic religion. Why dualistic? Because you all believe in a soul. There's no soul. That's the ego you're worshipping. You're mistaking it, the soul, the ego for the soul. You look around, that's very true. People are doing everything, even religiously, for their egos, for their individual selves. So you're mistaking that ego for the soul. So that's why it's all dualism. But when you really have that beatific vision, as it was called in Christianity, where everything comes together, you've gathered, it's concentrated, and then you've merged the mind into the heart, as we learned yesterday. Then you have that feeling of oneness, and it's more than a feeling, and it's more than an intuition. It's an actual experience that comes upon you. It's called samadhi. Buddha called it nirvana. Zen calls it satori. Fana in Muslim religion, if you will. So each religion has a word for that super concentrated state, or super conscious state. And Sri Ramakrishna described it, the hairs on the end on your arms stand on end, your skin horripulates, your eyes naturally roll up in the head, your tongue cleaves to the roof of the mouth. There's signs of it. 7 signs of it in Kundalini Yoga, of the descent of samadhi on the individual human being. And one of those would probably be, I can't think. I don't have a mind anymore, like he's singing. And that changes you and transforms you, so when you do come back to the body-mind mechanism, it's been made transparent. All the cobwebs have been cleaned out of it, as it were. The house has been cleaned completely. You can see out all the windows, and light can get in. So he talks about this transcendence of the mind and how it's an actual state of consciousness. And this go on then, so we penetrate some new slokas on this visit. In 11, he says, that's the Rishi who's put down his realizations in this Upanishad, Amritabindu Upanishad. He says, verily the Atman should be known as being the same in all states of consciousness. It's the same in wakefulness, it's the same in dreaming, and it's the same in dreamless sleep. Jagrat, Swapna, and Sushupti, those words. The 3 states of man's consciousness are waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. That's why I've been saying lately, where are the kingdoms of heaven? I ask you. They're inside of you. That's what he said. So what is it when I go inside of me? Blood, pus, phlegm, bile? That couldn't be the kingdoms of heaven. So it means inside the mind. So what's inside the mind? Waking, dreaming, and deep sleep is all in my mind. So that's where the kingdoms of heaven are. Oh, I see. So I found them. Now I have to explore them. My father's mansion has many chambers, so I have to go and look at those. So I have to spend some time inside, you see. It's just like you see a new house and you'd want to explore all the rooms. You found this inner house, which is your mind, and you want to explore all the rooms. Come to know it. Know thyself. He continues, for the one who has transcended these 3 states, there is no more rebirth. So we looked at this yesterday as far as the bardo of 7 days, the bardo of 14 days, and the bardo of 24 days. And the bardo at the moment of death, and then there's another bardo after death, to your next rebirth, and then another bardo of your birth and your new life starts off. So these are going through cycles, you see, so they're kind of defining Buddha's teaching about cycles. everything returns, like the river, everything returns. So Buddha realized that everything was based in cycles, so it proved, number one, that time was an illusion, that it has no beginning, middle, and end. It just goes on forever. And people are assigning beginnings and middles of ends and ends to it. Krishna says that to Arjuna in the Gita. There's no beginning, middle, and end to anything, Arjuna. It's all eternal. It's all constant. So time, too, masquerades itself as constant cycles until it's transcended. Your mind gets transcended. Where is time? Just like where are the kingdoms of heaven, right? In the mind. So where is time? In the mind. Because when you go into deep sleep tonight, there is no time. You can go ask Rip Van Winkle if you want. See? He was asleep for how many decades? Woke up with long fingernails. It seemed like a second had passed, you see. Like a man in a coma or something. So time is a construct of the mind. And so in Sloka 11, this is brought out. There's no more rebirth for that person who transcends the three states. Now, what are the dynamics of transcending the three states of your awareness? Connecting them. You see, people have this idea that transcendence is just going beyond and leaving something else behind. That's called neti neti. Not this, not this. He talks about that coming up. So, neti neti is a practice that you weed your garden with. Mind is kind of like a garden. It's got all sorts of things in it. Fruits, flowers, weeds, bugs, fruit flies. So you weed those out, you see. And that's the neti neti practice. I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not that. Neti neti, not this, not this. So that's something you have to work your way through. So in the same way then, when you find what you are, you've connected everything, because those things that were not yourself were causing divisions. So if you remove them, just like removing, Sri Krishna said, removing a little bulwark between the two streams all of a sudden come together, knock the little mud away, and they flow together. So you have to be about doing this in your mind. If you're a practitioner, serious practitioner of spiritual life, you have to see those things that are causing divisions and remove them with the power of your own thought. So you call upon her, Vakdevi, Shakti, help me remove these divisions in my mind and return to my indivisible state again, which is my true nature and which I've somehow forgotten. It's not lost. In a sense, it's lost, but it can be found. So one does that connecting process. So I'm quick to say that because Pipalada, one of the ancient rishis in his Upanishad, says, those who don't connect the A, U, and M of Om, they wander through the worlds many lifetimes without knowing the connections. Vyahritis, the connections to bring together. Like for instance, man, woman, and child is a connection that you have to keep sacred. Learning wisdom, teacher and student is a connection that you have to keep sacred. So there's lots of profound, there's like 5 main connections that the rishis were into, that they wanted people to recall if they'd forgotten. And once recalled, those connections are operating like a good 12-cylinder Jaguar. See? Every spark plug is firing perfectly, and it's a mean and clean running machine. So you want to have your mind like that. All the connections made. So waking, dreaming, and deep sleep are A-U-M. They're also Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, which we sung about yesterday. And so you're going to need to connect your waking with your dreaming, and then those two with the deep sleep, in order to transcend it. A lot of people don't get this teaching. Even amongst some of the non-dual schools, they don't get this teaching. So they think, oh, I can just jump from where I am at my body to the transcendent position, and I don't need to know anything that happens in between. Sri Krishna said, you may be a good high jumper, that you could jump from the lowest step to the highest step of a stair, but then you won't know what the middle stairs are made of. See? In order to know that it's all one, you'll have to know that the middle steps are made of the same thing as the lower and the higher. It's basically consciousness. I mean, mortar, brick dust, and so forth would be the actual, all the stairs are made of the same thing, but you're not going to know that if you take the jump without stage by stage, step by step, looking at each step and seeing how you're proceeding. So Sri Ramakrishna used to say, and Sri Ram said that, same person, Ramakrishna and Ram, that enlightenment dawns on the mind by stages. So it's not dawning on the mind of people who are jumping to a transcendent place because they're not going by stages. Even if it's to remember what those stages are, to recall them to mind. Oh yes, I've forgotten that, you see. Just like going to a place that you've only been to once. You make a wrong turn. Oh, now I remember, I'll go back. I remember doing this, so it's connections. So I hasten to bring that in here. AU and M are considered to be, if they're considered to be separate, then you're wandering the worlds without knowing what you're doing. Once they're connected, then you can transcend and become yourself again. A very important teaching in Vedanta. Let's go on. We're making really fast headway now. We just took 2 new slokas. Let's take a third. Just as it is the jar which is being removed from one place to another, and it changes places, not the akasha enclosed in the jar, so the jiva resembles that akasha. So basically there's a jar inside a space, not air. That gets displaced. Space doesn't get displaced by anything. So there's an akasha in the jar, and so you move the jar from one place to another. It's this same space. Space doesn't get displaced, you see. So they use this teaching about space in a jar a lot. Sometimes they use it in accord with the ego. See, it's like you break the jar, and the ego seemed to be separate from the outer space. But now the jar, as an ego complex, is gone, and it's just one space. It always was, but the jar made it look like it were separateness. So just like that, making these connections or doing away with the illusion of non-connection is that kind of realization that happens at the Advaitic level, non-dual level. So using it here in that space, just so the jiva, which resembles the akasha. So you are Brahman, you are that consciousness, but now you're taking yourself, made yourself look like an individualized bit of that consciousness by taking on a mind-ego mechanism. So now I'm not Brahman anymore, I'm body-mind mechanism. But when you take the body-mind mechanism away, aren't you just the Atman? You always were. You just put a covering over it. And so that's why we wanted to talk about a bit today about false superimposition in Vedanta. And this is a new chart. Nobody's seen this yet. Put it together last week because I was with one of my living teachers who passed away just some months ago by putting his body in the river. You could say he drowned himself, but he just walked to the river, put aside his crutches, and gave his body into the sacred river in India. Swami Damodarananda Maharaj, may peace and blessings be upon him always. So he was always walking around in his old age saying, Jai Sri Ramakrishna, Jai Sri Ramakrishna. He was always in ecstasy. And you'd go near him. We saw him in India when we were there, and blessed us with some darshan he gave us. So he said one day, when one of those darshans, he said, oh, there's a new book of previously unwritten stories that of Sri Ramakrishna's life. And he said, I was reading that the other day. And he said, I found out that somebody had asked Sri Ramakrishna one morning, how is it that Brahman's in everything? And Sri Ramakrishna just sat up and looked around. He said, see all this morning dew? Just like the sun is reflecting in all these dewdrops, Brahman is in everything. So I thought that was beautiful, and I hadn't read that in the gospel, because I've put out some 700 or 800 stories from the gospel in a book downstairs you can read. collected all the stories out of the gospel and put them in a compendium. But that one wasn't in there, so a very nice analogy that he made then. Just like Brahman is in all like the sun is shining in all the dewdrops, Brahman is in everything. So it opens up a lot of philosophical inspection. You can begin to enter into this higher knowledge by thinking about that. And the first thing you'll encounter is this, just like we said, neti, neti, you not this, not this. Why do you practice that? Because there's been a great wool pulled over your eyes by name and form. When you took on name and form, mind, ego, time, space, all out of your own mind, you took on the mind, then you were put at risk, and you didn't know that everything was a masquerade. So actually, before we look at that, and we'll look at this in a minute, let's just back up one and see how false assumptions of the Atman are going on. This is a quick study from Gaudapada, Shankara's teacher. He says, there is no limit to the mind's imaginings. Different people, so long as they have not acquired the proper knowledge, indulge in the pastime of describing the Paramatman, that is your Supreme Self, in various ways. Atman is imagined to be prana and other innumerable entities. This is the maya of the Atman, by which even the Atman itself becomes deluded. So everyone's calling their child, the Atman, or calling money the Atman, or calling their car the Atman, or calling their ego the Atman, as my teacher said. You all think that there's a soul here. That's the ego you're worshipping, not the soul. So, in many ways, Gaudapada came through, and he goes on, might as well finish his quote, he says, Vivekananda goes on in this way, and that this Lord we are trying to realize, time without beginning in the objective, and the attempt throwing up such queer creatures of our fancy, as man, woman, child, body, mind, earth, sun, moon, stars, the world, love, hate, property, wealth, etc., also ghosts, devils, angels, gods, and God, etc. We're all putting that into the periphery of false superimposition. See? So whatever we like, we rush to and assign that. It's just like we're calling that God. But it's not God. None of this is God. God is transcendent of name and form and time and space, and how many times do we have to repeat that to you out of the Paravidya before you get the idea? So it's all the mind doing its act of false superimposition with the help of Maya. So this is how people fall into delusion. Whole cultures fall into delusion. It was no different in Greece and Rome. So if you base your assessment of what Brahman is on names and forms and false superimposition, then you're always barking up the wrong tree. See, here's you, here's the tree. See, you're always barking up the wrong tree. So what does Gaudapada say about this? That some beings take merit and demerit. That's the religionist. That's the fire-darting reformer. He thinks that's his Atman. Some people take dharma and adharma. That's the virtuous person. Morality and immorality. And they take that to be the truth. Others taken to be various ashramas by the four castes. So I'm a merchant. You're a worker. He's a warrior. He's a priest. So the four castes become real, and that's their God. Taken to be mind and intellect by scholars and scientists. So that's their God. They've taken mind and intellect and superimposed it over the Atman, which is transcendent of all that. And so they get into that, you see. Taken to be prana by metaphysicians. Taken to be padas and by the adherents of phonetics, letters, alphabets, and so forth. Taken to be the five elements by earthbound souls. There's a good one. People who believe in nature only. That's their God. Then we have a young girl we're working with now. What's God to you? Nature is God. Okay, well that's a good start. We'll start there. But do you like nature when it becomes terrible? Earthquakes, floods, fires. So we'll start there and move on, you see. Taken to be physical objects by materialists. That might as well be their God. Some Christians say that. If all they know is matter, then that's their God. So you kind of leave them to it, see. Sort of like pigs in filth. See? They're just going to wallow in it. So you just leave them. What can you do? Can you convince a pig not to wallow? It's going to be very hard. See? So they're just wallowing in matter, and we might as well back up one. Even scientists are rather wallowing in matter. How about taken to be the three gunas by the knowers of the gunas? The gunas are very high teaching, but if you make them the ultimate reality, then you've done a false superimposition of the gunas over the Atman. But, oh, wait a minute, let's go back and read the scripture. See, the Atman is transcendent of the gunas. So why have you made the gunas more prominent than your Atman? False superimposition. Vivarta. Adhyasa is another word they use. So it's important because it's a vehicle by which you can awaken. When you find yourself guilty of taking the unreal to be real, is how they say it. Nitya nitya vastu viveka. You take what's non-eternal and you call it eternal, and vice versa. Then Maya is afoot. So the people who wake up to that fact and have pulled a very fast one on their own minds. See, they've actually out-clevered their own mind. All of a sudden they wake up and see Maya everywhere. No one else does. Until I was 19, I didn't understand why everyone was doing what they were doing, why I wasn't happy here, and so forth and so on. See, then I found out about the Indian rishis and this word, this four-letter word, which is the queen of all four-letter words, if you know what I mean, called Maya. And the Indian rishis had actually espied it, had like found it and brought it out. And it's sort of like you would bring out oil from sesame seeds. You don't know it's there, you see. And then they said, oh, I see, everything's operating under Maya. And right then, the mind made a shift. And they were totally different than all the rest of the people in the world. When they made when they put their finger on it. Oh, that's what's making everyone deluded. That's what's making everyone think something unreal is real, and vice versa. So that's what Gaudapada is going on about here. He says, taken to be the lokas by ancestors, celestials, and seekers of heaven. So instead of thinking about their transcendent Atman, what are they thinking about? Heaven. Instead of worshipping the non-dual Brahman, what are they worshipping? Their ancestors. Look into some of the religions of the world, including the Hindus, are guilty of just worshipping the ancestors and forgetting their truth. They're not the ancestors. The ancestors aren't the ancestors. They're all Atman, one indivisible soul, one homogeneous consciousness, without breaks, without divisions, without modifications, without sublations, and hopefully without false superimpositions, if your mind can manage the shift. It's not that hard. It's that once you manage it, you have to be careful not to become depressed. When you see that the world that you love so much is not real, the first problem is, oh, that's depressing. See, now I don't know where to go. So that's why you need a path and a teacher. Oh, you go towards your true self, which is full of bliss, which is full of peace. So there's some dynamics there you have to be sort of careful of. It's very risky to stay in the world. It's also risky to awaken spiritually. There are risks involved in all of it. So you need a guide, and you need an example, an exemplar like him. who has realized this kind of esoteric or very subtle knowledge, and has awakened to the truth, and can now stand forth and proclaim the truth with no uncertain words to you, and dispel your doubts, and help you destroy your fears. So that's a good one. Taken to be lokas. Lokas means heavens, basically. You know, like these bardos that we looked at. You see, rainbow worlds and so forth, where the soul goes when it parts the body. It doesn't go out to some star. There's nothing up there. It goes inward. There's no aliens out there in space. A whole universe came out of your mind. So if there's any alien, that alien's in your mind. The only thing you might find on that planet out there is your own footprint from another aeon. So man, the universe is man's creation. Mankind came up with it out of the mind, projected it. If you're looking for aliens, look at the bottom of the ocean. There's plenty of weird things down there that would seem alien to you because you've never seen them before. But it all came out of your mind. So the ancestors are much like that. You see, I think I'll go to some heaven. That's my truth. So I'm just saying I'm going to shift from this form to another form. I'm a shapeshifter, you see. But consciousness, Atman, is formless. I read that so often in the non-dual teachings. Why am I all of a sudden reverting back to these old habits of taking a form again, or thinking myself to be a form? If you take a form and know you're not the form, that's different. See, like the Jivan Mukta we were talking about yesterday. But in other words, you can associate with form, but you should never identify with form. That's how Shankara puts it in the Vivekachudamani. Associating with form, that's okay, if you can be masterful at it. But identifying with form, that's a no-no, absolutely not. And that form means any form. Because if you're identifying with any form, it's a false superimposition over Brahman, which is formless. Let's all say that 108 times. So till it gets deep enough in our mind to where we're thinking about it more often. So we're not falling into that mistake. They call that mula vidya, root ignorance. Patanjali calls it the desire for rebirth. Why do we always want to come back to the form? Particularly when we don't know the formless yet, out of which form comes. So if you know the formlessness out of which form comes, then you can come back free of most of the risks. I mean, you're still going to have to pay the tax to the body. Birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death. Nobody escapes those. He didn't either. He got cancer of the throat. So that's what comes with the package. So you might want to consider that. So do I want to go through that again? They'll say, yes, for the sake of others, I'll go through it again. So they're great sacrificers. They're doing it for our sake. Krishna comes in the Gita, I just don't have anything here to gain anymore. I come back for the good of other beings. So 100% loka sangraha. See, so taken to be lokas by the ancestor celestials. So the great soul will come back and free the ancestors from the problem of false superimposition of placing heaven above God, or a form over the formless Atman. It's false superimposition. Those are the two words that we've borrowed to define vivarta in Sanskrit, which doesn't occur in any other language. There's no idea like that. Like every religion is saying the world was created out of beauty and light and all that. Only Hinduism says created out of ignorance. It's created out of ignorance. Because if you had knowledge, you wouldn't take a form. So obviously you've lost your knowledge. Then you create a form and go to school to try and find it again. See? Isn't it silly, really? The teachers don't like me in school. I couldn't go to Lajini's school and be liked. See? Because I would sit in the class and go, what are you all doing here again? Why do I have to come back and tell you again that all knowledge lies within you? Why are you going to school again in another lifetime to try and get the knowledge that's already within you? Why don't you just wake up right now to the fact that all knowledge lies within you? There are 7 laws to yoga. That's the second. All knowledge lies within you. Shall we say that 108 times? Till it dawns on us? And out of that knowledge, we projected this world. What's wrong with us? What else is it taken to be here? Taken to be the many tattvas by the intellectuals. Tattvas means principles. Earth, air, fire, water, ether, tasting, touching, hearing, smelling, seeing. Those 10 in a dream. And the fourfold mind. That's basically the 24 cosmic principles. So people are taking the 24 cosmic principles to be the Atman by the act of false superimposition. By the very fact that they're studying these things, their concentration goes towards them, considers them to be real. That becomes their knowledge, and the knowledge of Brahman is placed in the background, automatically. Brahman is so swift and immediate and so all-pervasive, immediately present in every moment. Then you're busy practicing the art of false superposition to make it lag behind. See, your mind forgets it. You could think of it right now and have realization, and then all of a sudden think, oh, I'm going to move out the door. Then Brahman's gone. That was how Zen Buddhists would teach you, the Roshis and so forth. And you stand up and move toward the door, remember your Buddha nature. Think, this act of standing up is my Buddha nature. I am Buddha nature. I'm moving toward the door, which is also Buddha nature. I'm going to the next room, which is Buddha nature, and so forth. And you practice the art of mindfulness. Mindfulness isn't just, oh, let's take a walk in nature or have a cup of tea with the Roshi, you see, and then go home and forget it all. Mindfulness is something you keep moment to moment until the eternal moment is the only moment for you. Shiva is the observer of past, present, and future because he knows they're all illusory. Only the eternal moment is true, and he's living in that. So ancestors, metaphysicians, people belonging to the 4 castes, religionists, scholars, scientists, they're not living in the eternal moment. They're probably not even interested in it. They're invested in everything else that they think is the truth, which is really the non-truth, via the act of false superimposition, vivarta. Taken to be gods and goddesses by their votaries. So you can turn the gods and goddesses into Atman. The gods and goddesses are gods and goddesses because they forgot their Atman. Otherwise they wouldn't be taking a form. The higher and deeper the god and goddess, the more and more they know the Atman, you could say that. But they're still a form, and they still have followers. They say the problem with the gods and goddesses is lordship. And you'll see people incarnated on earth from the gods and goddesses that are great dominators. They want to control the world, explore the world and completely bring it under their control. Those were gods and goddesses in another loka, in a past lifetime. And they still have a very deep desire for domination, for lordship over millions of souls. And that's where they get off. And so, individual soul, they want individual souls, but the indivisible soul doesn't want powers. It wants to remain free, transcendent and free, taken to be creation, sustenance, and dissolution by philosophers, taken to be gross, subtle, and causal by cosmologists, taken to be, could add another one in there, taken to be lipstick, makeup, and hair dye by the cosmetologists. Makeup is their god. See? But taken to be gross, subtle, and causal by the cosmologists. taken to be Vedas and sacrifices by the priest class. So the priest class has their own false superimposition going on all the time, doing rituals, so forth and so on. We practiced rituals for decades and centuries. Then we found out that those gods that we were worshipping had control over us, and we wanted free. That's right out of the Upanishads. So early Aryans, that is the Indians, early Indians, they were doing lots of worship. They had so much worship, so many rituals you couldn't shake a stick at all of them. And a worship for every god and goddess that they could think of, you see. Finally, they did it so well, and they pulled it off so perfectly, and then they realized, I see, we're just playing into the realm of the gods and goddesses, and they're binding us. They're dependent upon us, and we're dependent upon them. And that doesn't sound like freedom, to be dependent upon anything. So I think I'll realize the independent self, the Atman. So they broke off with ritual, and that's where the Upanishads were born, what we're studying today. It's non-dual. Taken to be Vedas and sacrifices by the priest class then, and taken to be enjoyment and objects of enjoyment by worldly beings. What is the God of the worldly out there? Where's my next car? Where's my next couch? Where's my next TV? Where's my next cell phone? Where's the next gadget? That's their God. So they're by false superimposition, they're taking those things to be the Atman. And that's out of root ignorance. So Gaudapada speaks out of his famous Karika with all of these examples about how you shouldn't be guilty of false superimposition. What is the Atman? The Atman is the Atman. And there's no other. It's superlative. It's the only reality. Everything else is false. Nitya, anitya, vastuveka. So the difference between the real and the unreal, if you apply it, you'll find that only Brahman is real, all else is unreal. It's a very famous statement in Vedanta. So you'd have to look to find Brahman. When you found it, you see, oh, I see, that's the reality, nothing else compares. So I think I'll stop all this business of false superimposition and be myself again. That's enlightenment. Very simply put. But you'll have to do some weeding of your garden. That's actually a good place to stop for the break. But let me show this again real quick, because there are more philosophical levels to false superimposition which are interesting, and one would be this blazing sun reflecting in everything. There's important teachings in Vedanta which tell us that the moon shines by borrowed light. You hear that a lot. So the moon thinks it's shining, but it's not shining by its own light. The word in Vedanta in Sanskrit is svayambhuva or svayamba. Self-effulgent. See, so the sun is self-effulgent. It has its own light, and everything else shines by its light. So they think that's the Atman, metaphorically speaking, by analogy, and everything else is borrowing its light. So we'll look at that after the break, how the dewdrops of everything you see listed here, that was much of it was back here in this chart too, the false superimposition chart, is shining by one light. Na tatra suryavati, na chandra-tarakam. Not the light of the sun or moon or stars or fire or lightning. It's the light of the Atman which gives all those their light. Beautiful sloka in the Upanishads. So thank you for this hour and a half review of 3 slokas out of the Amritabindu, the drop of nectar Upanishad. And we will meet in 15 minutes with the live streaming audience for the second half of this class. Thank you.
Red light.
We welcome you back to the second half of our second class in San Francisco this weekend. February, time of Sri Ramakrishna's birthday and his Jayanti. And we had our puja last night for him of about an hour and a half, singing the Sri Ramakrishna Chalisa, 40 verses on his life, and offering a garland made by our own hands here, the devotees, very beautiful garland, and food that was purified in the puja and eaten afterwards by us for our prasad dinner. That's the way not only we follow the calendar, as we were saying in the first half, but the way we follow through and make our whole lives an emanation of dharma and spirituality. Bring it into our lives and work it in, even into our workplace, into places that are very resistant to the light of spirituality, as we know. The light of spirituality is different than the light of the sun and light of the moon, or the light of ancestors and relatives, the light of heaven. It's different from the light of conventional atmospheres, and different from the light of religion too. So when we talk about spirituality, which isn't the best word, but we don't really have any better in English, because spirituality sometimes calls forth ideas of metaphysics and occult things and so forth. It's not that we're talking about. We're talking about this paravid, or this, they have plenty of words for it in Sanskrit, this supreme knowledge that really speaks about one thing: the identity of the apparently individualized soul with the Supreme Soul. The Jivatman, the apparently individualized soul, is the Supreme Soul, Paramatman. There is no difference. God is mankind. Man is God walking around on two legs. That was Swami Vivekananda's quote. The fact that he's not really acting like it yet is a problem. Suffering, misery, violence, so forth. Those kinds of things we're all working, those of us who are aware of spirituality, to better in the world. Working in the world without any expectation, because the world will always be a place of half light and half darkness, half good, half bad, half virtue, half vice, half peace and half violence. It's never going to be anything different. So we have given up our hopes and our expectations for a perfect world. Swami Vivekananda used to tell us that saying a good world is like saying hot ice. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. So it makes it, on the other hand, a very good place to polish your diamond. You are the diamond of pure conscious awareness. That's your Atman. And diamonds can even get covered with dust and lose their luster. So the world, with its grinding powers of good and bad and virtue and vice, is actually a very good place to be if you can subject yourself to it and still survive. That is, you don't want to commit spiritual suicide. Spiritual suicide is forgetting your true nature. And so that can be a forgetfulness that can last for lifetimes. So it's a risk that you take. In fact, at the break we were talking about the difference between the word Maya, and Lila. Lila is divine sporting, which we see some of the great souls doing that. They don't seem to mind the world at all. They can be in it and not of it, as the common saying goes. Otherwise, Maya is this false superimposition over things that we just spent half of the first half on. And we're going to continue on looking at that. Vivartopadana is the actual Sanskrit word, if you flesh it out. Vivarta means false superimposition. The common, or the most famous analogy of it is the snake and the rope and the snake. You've probably heard about it. So they say you're walking along in the semi-darkness just before dark, and you see a snake and you jump in fear and your heart palpitates, and you look closer and you see it's actually a rope. So you superimpose the idea of snake on the rope. Well, that's a good teaching, just to be careful when you walk at night, but that's not the real point. The real point is that you're looking at Brahman when you look at the world, but you're superimposing the world over Brahman. And of course, in order to see it all as Brahman, you're going to have to know yourself as Brahman and know the difference between the real and the unreal. You can't miss any of these important pieces and just jump to the top, as we said, and say, oh, it's unreal, I give it up. But you're still in it. You still have to act in it. You still have to think about it. You still have to make it, to have a living, and raise your children and all that. So it's very impractical to jump to a conclusion like that without having all the pieces in place. So to put the pieces in place, we talked about that in the first half. You want to be careful of the risk of false superimposition, of taking everything else except the Atman for the Atman. You should actually, Sri Ramakrishna put it nice, you have a whole line of zeros, which are everything in your life. Your family, your friends, your job, your money, your children are all zeros. In the end, they add up to nothing because you die. And nobody knows what happens after death, evidently. So Sri Ramakrishna said, well, that's okay, just put the one in front of the zeros. And you have a huge number. So very simple solutions he had. So your wife, your children, your job, your money, your everything becomes full of meaning to you if you just make this shift of putting the one, that is God, Brahman, Allah, Buddha nature, whatever you want to call it, in front of those zeros. Bring that to the fore, like the computer, bring to front, because that's what you want to see first. Each time you open your eyes in the morning and when you go to sleep and shut them at night, you want to be thinking of this background consciousness. Now, the seers have brought it so far forward that the world doesn't exist anymore. And that's the real secret of what I just said, is that basically Brahman is real, the world is unreal. So they know that. But since they know the Brahman is real and the world's unreal, they can participate in the world play and not fall afoul of it. And Sri Ramakrishna, hands down, is the best example of that. In this age, if not in all ages, we feel. He had samadhi all the time. And we've never seen a man like that. One of the lines in the song last night, Ramakrishna Chalisa, Jaya Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan Karuna Maya Jaya Kripa Nidana. In this key though, Jaya Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan Karuna Maya Jaya Kripa Nidana. Jaya Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan Karuna Maya Jaya Kripa Nidana. Jaya Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan Karunamaya Jaya Kripa Nidana. Jaya Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan Karunamaya Jaya Kripa Nidana. Jaya Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan Karunamaya Jaya Kripa Nidana. That Ramakrishna, Kali avatar, the Matri avatar, the Divine Mother avatar. We've never seen a soul come to this earth as an avatar of Divine Mother. We've seen Vishnu avatars, Shiva avatar, Amsa avatars. This one came as a manifestation of the Divine Mother of the universe, known as Mother Kali. Careful of Mother Kali. See? It's a deep, deep secret. So, when we invoke a great soul like that, we're really invoking our true nature. I mean, he had so many samadhis. So one of the lines of that song last night said, gods and goddesses revealed themselves to him in multitudes. Like most seers and saints are like if they have a vision of like one great soul once in their life, you see, and it changes them. But Sri Ramakrishna was having visions of gods and goddesses revealing themselves to him in multitudes. All the time he was having these visions inside. He had opened up all the nadis inward, and he was coursing along them in different forms of samadhi and consciousness. Consciousness was an open book to him, not a closed down matter of vivarta or false superimposition, where you're pretending something is real when it's really not. Trying to beat Maya at its own game. Good luck with that, as they say. So another beautiful line of that song has to do with this world has never seen a soul like him before, is the exact quote. This world has never seen a soul like him before. And to look back and find a soul that's even close to him would be to go back 2,000 years to Jesus or 2,500 years to Lord Buddha. Those souls were superlative souls. And so beautiful Chalisa we sang in this worship last night, 40 verses. Took us about 45 minutes, and with the English translation, about his whole life. And so how he dealt with the problem of Maya and Brahman, or Maya in Brahman. He used to say, Brahman is the snake and Maya is the poison side. But the snake never suffers by the poison inside itself. So the Brahman remains pure despite the vagaries and vicissitudes of this world. So lots of snake stories, you see. The one we just started out was the snake and the rope, or rope and the snake. You think the world is the world, but it's actually Brahman. So you've superimposed the world over Brahman. And now you're thinking of worlds, like the ancestors are thinking of worlds, like the phoneticists are thinking of worlds, and the religionists are thinking of worlds, and so forth and so on. The chart we had at the end of last class, first half of this class. So, but now we want to strip that, you see, of all its coverings. False superimposition is you strip all those coverings off it, and you see it as it truly is. You accept it as it truly is. You know it as it truly is, and you know it as yourself. So this is why I'm starting off this class with that. The apparently individualized soul, Jivatman, is the Supreme Soul, Paramatman. Mankind is just God walking around on two legs. So this is what Vivekananda realized, and when he came west to America and saw us living otherwise, he said, "Oh, you haven't realized that mankind is just God walking around on two legs." And then he followed that up by saying, "Where else do you see God except in you? Are the animals God? Are the stars God? Where is God except in mankind?" So realize that, and maybe the world won't change all good, but you'll definitely improve the conditions of things. It has happened that there have been periods of peace, light. They call that the Satya Yuga in India, as compared to Dwapara Yuga and Treta Yuga, where people lose consciousness of this fact, this very simple fact that I and my Father are one. How could you lose that? Christ had to come and enact that for us, and then come out of the forest like Buddha did, and like Moses on the mount and so forth. Come off the mountain, out of the plains, off the desert, out from under the tree, and proclaim, I and my Father are one. There, I'm telling you again in this age, please follow. Realize yourself as that. There is no other God but you. Now, if you give that to an immature person, it's a dangerous piece of information, because they're still thinking the ego to be God, thinking their ego to be themselves. Which is why I quoted from my teacher last half. Oh, they're Christianity completely dualistic because they think there's a soul, but there's no soul out there. That's the ego they're worshipping. They think that's the soul. So when you really see the soul, you're seeing one with Brahman, then false superimposition is already beginning to slide away. And then you get some vision like Sri Ramakrishna saying, well, just like the sunlight reflects in dewdrops, just like that, Brahman is in everything. So that would open up a philosophical conversation amongst them, and they'd start saying, yes, but the dewdrop is not the sun, and the dewdrop also comes and goes. At night and in the morning it'll appear. So it must be a part of the world of change, or Maya. So then you have, Maya is the poison inside of the snake, which is Brahman. So, or you have, I wonder if it's up there, in one of these quotes you have the idea of the reflection of the moon in a mud puddle. Definitely, are you that daft to think that's the real moon? You touch it and it ripples. But no, it makes you look up to the real thing. So there's a very deep connection with the reflection and the real thing. The false superimposition is the reflection. And you're enhancing that by thinking that to be real. You're taking reflections to be real. But the seer doesn't do that. The yogi doesn't do that. He stops that process and says only Brahman is real. So from the standpoint of only Brahman is real, all these dewdrops become real. And that, from that standpoint only, after you've matured your thinking process and refined your ego, maybe even done away with your ego as far as it's possible, while still keeping a body, you're living in this state of all-pervasive oneness. Your third eye is open, and if your third eye is open, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So that state of freedom is upon them. So Sri Ramakrishna's quote here, just as the morning sun reflects its light in the many dewdrops that settle on fields and flowers at dawn, so too does the one indivisible Brahman shine its light of pure awareness through the world's many objects, such as plants, animals, human bodies, all without losing its homogeneous nature in the least. So you can't accuse the sun of becoming a dewdrop just because some of its light in it. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that. What is it the fault of the tree that the leaves fall sometimes in the gutter, sometimes in the sewer, sometimes in the courtyard, and sometimes in the churchyard? See, different leaves are different souls falling in different low or high places. But it's not the fault of the tree. The tree doesn't have anything to do with where its leaves fall. So in that way, you can't blame Brahman or the divine reality for all these forms that you're taking and all these false superpositions that you're making. So, you leave that sacrosanct. Sri Ramakrishna used to also say that. Brahman is the one thing that never can be defiled by the tongue and mind of mankind. It never got defiled. So it's the one thing that's pure and perfect, and it's your innermost self. You are that. Jivatman is Paramatman. My teacher used to say that in a tantric way. Jiva is Shiva, he would say. Jiva is Shiva. Jivatman is Shiva. So to realize that then is to do away with the apparent distinction between you and that, between this and that. Aham and idam, Tantra says it. The true I, the false I, the true I, and how that false I goes away when the true I realizes itself. Aham means ego. Aham also means I am. So it's going to come from that standpoint of whether you're associating with the ego or identified with it. And if you're associating with the ego, you can also disassociate from it. So that's how a person gets in samadhi. They ripen the ego, then everything is good in life. And they stop there? No. That's salvation. But they want liberation, not salvation. They don't want to be dependent on anyone or anything, including Jesus or Buddha or Krishna. So the non-dual seer says, now I will disassociate with that ripe ego and give up my individual bliss, and I will take on the entire ocean of bliss as my own. I and my Father are one. So when you have that experience under the tree, you realize the death of the ego completely. The Zen Buddhists, if you're sitting on a round pillow right now, like Lajini is there, sitting on a zafu, see? So if you come in off your zafu at Zazen and talk to the Roshi, he'll say, well, have you died on your zafu yet? It's one of the questions he'll ask. He wants to know if you've died in meditation. Because it's not like the death of choking and screaming and, horrible things. It's actually quite easy to give up the ego at certain times of your life. Like in sleep tonight, you give it up. Is that horrible? But then it comes dancing forward in waking state and causes all sorts of mischief. Reminds me of my teacher again. He used to say, the ego is like an unwelcome guest at a party. You ask it when it's leaving. And it says, well, I'll think about it. It just goes on causing mischief and mischief at your party of life, you see. You ask it, well, when are you going? It says, well, I'll think about it. It's having a lot of fun there, causing mischief. So when that ego ripens, it's a good thing. Pakvahamkara, apakvahamkara. That's unripe ego and ripe ego. And the ripe ego is what you see in the seers and the saints and so forth. But they also have the ability to actually destroy the ego. That's the whole meaning behind, if you see the Buddha on the road, kill him. It's a very, very startling statement to make. But basically, what you're looking at the Buddha, you're looking at a personality or a body. And he's not the body nor the personality, but you don't know that. So you should kill that and just see the Buddha nature in him. If you can do it in him, you can do it in yourself. And if you can do it in the two of you, you can do it in everything else. And most people are trying to do it from the ground up. Well, I think maybe I'll kill the ego in my child. I'll kill the ego in my friend or something. They're trying to do it from the ground up, but how's that possible? You have to go to the highest state, realize the self, and then from there on see everything as a manifestation of that self-same self. So, beautiful analogy there. He continues on down here. Brahman is qualified by the universe and its living beings. That's called Vishishtadvaita, qualified non-dualism. At the beginning, while following the method of not this, you know what that means now, neti neti we had in the first half, one has to eliminate the universe and its living beings. But as long as the I consciousness remains, one cannot but feel that it is God himself who has become everything. He alone has become the 24 cosmic principles. Well, there's the tattvas. So that dewdrop is like the tattvas, you see. 24 cosmic principles of the universe. Tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, smelling, air, earth, fire, water, ether, so on and so on. Everything of our universe, outside, and its mirror, inside. Because you take air, earth, fire, water, and ether, and tasting, touching, seeing, smelling, and hearing into your dream state tonight, too. So those are 10 subtle forms of that. And then you have a fourfold mind. It's at the hub of all that. So those are all the tattvas. That's a bit of light shining in a dewdrop. It's Brahman's light that makes those operate. Makes water flow. Makes fire burn. Makes food taste. Makes you move your arm. But it's not the entirety of Brahman. See? It's just a little bit of its reflected light. To explain that, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, the glowworm comes out at night and shines. It's very proud of its light. I'm shining, you see. Then firefly comes out, and it gets all depressed and goes back in the ground, you see. It saw a bigger light than itself. Then the moon comes out, the firefly goes, oh, shit. Just disappears, you know. And then the sun comes out, and the moon gets ashamed. Realizes that it shines by borrowed light from the sun. So all these different levels of light are all one light, but the vehicle that they're shining in is different. So these are all examples of some of the vehicles that light of Brahman shines in. Let's look at them quickly. There's the Mahat, probably got the most light of all. I chanted at the beginning of class today, Hiranmaye Parikoshi Virajan Brahmaniskalam. Tachubram Jyotisham Jyoti, that's light, Jyoti. Tadatma Viddo Vidduhu, so shining like burnished gold, highest and deepest, core intelligence of living beings, that's the light of Brahman. See? And people either know it or they don't, knowingly or unknowingly. So basically the Mahat is the greatest receptacle of all of Brahman's light. It's the cosmic mind, out of which the minds of the gods and goddesses, and the minds of the ancestors, the minds of the humans, and so forth, all came out of as manifestations. Lesser and lesser lights, down this pecking order. Trickle-down process of consciousness in its infinite nature, down to these individualized lights that think that they're shining by their own light. But it all comes from the light of Brahman. Like dewdrops, he said. So Mahat has a huge amount of light in it, because all the ideas for the 24 cosmic principles are in it. If sun is there, then the intelligence that created the sun is there. If water is there, then the idea of water being liquid is there. If fire is there, or we use that actually, if earth is there, then the idea of being solid is there. So everything came out of an idea. We studied the universe finally we found out that it looks more like a thought than a machine. There's a scientist at the turn of the 18th century that said that. And of course they didn't like he said that. Other scientists didn't like that. It's like they didn't like Einstein. You know. Took them beyond Newtonian physics and so forth. Oh, we don't want to go. Because that's our Atman. See, we have a false superposition of Newtonian physics over the rest of it. So you can't budge us. See. So souls come along and have to budge people. Like Sri Ramakrishna has to come along and budge us out of the idea that we're individualized souls, born in ignorance and suffering, and being reincarnated over and over again due to our own karmas. Blast your karmas, just rise out of it, he said. Be your true self again. It's not that hard. So these great Vedantic thought bombs, sometimes they're called, like Vivarta, false superimposition, are there to help you realize first the situation you're in and then transcend it. You have a tool. It's a mental tool. It's not like you can go out and sit in a posture or do a breathing exercise and get enlightenment. That's not going to happen. It's a mental tool. Vedanta starts here, cuts here, starts here. The problem started here, the solution is there. In your mind. Your mind is the problem, and so in the mind the solution also exists. So you work in the mind to affect the solution. And then your body and everything reflects it afterwards. You can work on your body all lifetime and it'll just die. Decay, disease, old age. You can't put that off. Not very long. So you work in the mind to convince yourself that that's the nature of the body and you're not the body. Deha. Deha is one of the cosmic principles. See, physical, the body. But there is a light shining here. And there's a brain here, and there's some energy here. See, matter, thought, and energy are all in the body. So Atman exists even here in this very body. Upanishads stay. Satyena labhyastapassahe Atma. It's everywhere. Vyastapassahe Atma. It's everywhere. So Mahat, the great receptacle of light. Then you see the Trinity there. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the great gods, in charge of creation, preservation, and destruction. They have a lot of light. But don't make the mistake of turning the Trinity into the ultimate reality. You see, there's some of these people who think creation, preservation, and dissolution are the Atman. So basically like saying Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are the Atman. There's a lot of light of the Atman in them, but that's not the Atman. I said yesterday in class, when you see Lord Brahma, you're going to have to ask him, will you take me beyond this creation? It's very beautiful, really, but I want out. I've had my bath, and I'm clean, and I want out. So Swamiji said the universe is like a place to flex your muscles. The world is a place to flex your muscles, then you get out. It's a gymnasium, he said. Swami wrote me a couple of months ago and said, the world's a hole in the ground. And he was semi-paraphrasing Sri Ramakrishna, who brought it full circle and said, the world's a hole in the ground and your relatives are vipers inside of it. So he wasn't kind to the ego. He wasn't pulling any punches on people. He was telling them the way it is. You're attached to your ancestors. You think the ancestors are your Atman. See, they're your reality. You're investing all your energy in them. But they don't have anything to teach you that you don't already know. You just think they do. And oftentimes what they give you is mixed knowledge. It doesn't really do you any good. It just embroils you more in Maya. Like, I think going to heaven is the highest thing, you see. My teacher used to say, I do not care for a post-mortem emancipation. I do not believe in heaven. I only believe in the indivisible Atman. So Trinity is there. Ishvara's got a lot of light. That's why we meditate on Ishvara. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva are gods and goddesses, but the Ishvara forms, They're specifically out of Divine Mother. And so they have this ultimate knowledge that they can transmit to you. And like Lord Buddha and Jesus and Ramakrishna and so forth, they're Ishvara forms. So they have an immense amount of light in them, and they can transmit this to you and wake you up. Wake you up from the sleep of ignorance. Down the spectrum here, manas, mind, has a lot of light. See? The universe itself is full of lights. Ego self, ahamkara, has light, reflected from the sun of Brahman. Tanmatras, you know what tanmatras are? Probably not. Vivekananda said the West doesn't know about them, but they're the subtle elements in your dream state. That is, air, fire, water, earth, and ether have subtle causes out of which they come, which the gross ones come. So you'll have to look at your tanmatras in dream tonight to see that when you saw water there, that was an idea, and then out of the idea came the real thing. And then it's helping you connect the dream state to the waking state, or the A of Om to the U of Om. And now you have two worlds together, you see. You're a knower of two worlds. That's pretty good. But you don't still know where all of this came from, because you can trace air, earth, water, fire, and ether back to the tanmatras, which are which they are subordinate to in dream state. But you don't know where air, earth, fire, water, and ether as thoughts came from. And that came from your deep sleep state. Those are seeds. See, they took on solid form, then they took on subtle form, dream form, then they took on seeds. So out of the seeds everything came marching out. And it's true for all the tattvas. Everything came from a seeded state. So Father of Yoga says, if you know that, you get seeded samadhi. Sabija means samadhi with seeds. Bliss is a samadhi with seed. Ripe ego is a samadhi with seed. Knowledge is a samadhi with seed. So you haven't got to the seedless samadhi yet, in which you would burn all those even, and have your I and my Father are one experience, finally. You have to be about your Father's business. So you go get your non-dual samadhi, hopefully in front of thousands of people, so that they would know. Living beings. Remember last night we had that quote, or yesterday afternoon in the morning we had that quote from Ramakrishna. We said, living beings, the universe, love, knowledge, those are all manifestations of God. In that quote we had yesterday. So living beings are manifestations of God. You know, if you look at the living being and you see him right or her right, then you're seeing God there. And that would be good for both of you if you could do that. Oh, you think I'm God? Yes, you're God. Oh, great. You know, we have a mutual admiration society here. And actually that's what they want you to do in Tantra with your wife and your husband. You know, one's a goddess, one's the god. You see each other that way and game over. No more problems, you see. She comes up to you, or you come up to her in some bad mood. Oh, but yes, dear, I salute you. You're God. You're Shiva. Where'd your anger? It just goes away. You see. I can't be angry at you because you always see me as God. So, no matter what darshana or tradition you see it in, that's a fact. That it's good for both of you if you can see each other's divine nature and help them bring it out. Help them manifest it. Where is that soul, you're asking yourself, in my life that I could do that with? We're rather rare because people aren't practicing this this form of purification. You can call it shuddhi. You have to follow a tradition that purifies the mind, because the mind's going to see the wife or the husband as anything but divine. There are different names for that. I won't use them. It's just like you're giving the Atman different names with false superimposition. So prana, also a lot of light in prana. See, these two, tanmatras and prana, are what we don't know about in the West. If we knew about those, and Christ was saying man does not live by bread alone, if we knew that prana was there in us and that the tanmatras were inside of us, then all of a sudden these connections between the outer world and the inner world could be made. Since we don't know about them, they're not being made. They're short-circuited. So nobody can go inside. Have you tried it? I don't think I'll go inside now. I'm getting bored with this. Time for dinner. And you didn't go anywhere. You just thought about some garbage in your mind. Sri Ramakrishna said that. 2 men went into the temple at Jagannath to see the deity, the famous deity there in the temple of India. Jagannath, image of the Lord. So one goes in, looks at them, comes out. The other goes in. And Sri Ramakrishna said, one went in and saw the Lord of the universe in the image. The other went in and looked and just saw some garbage in his mind. So whatever state you go in there with, you're thinking, I'm going to go see the Lord of the universe, and it's going to shine through the image, and there you are, and you see it. And just like Swami Vivekananda, you see the statue of Mother Kali at Dakhaneshwar temple come alive and dance. Just like she did for Sri Ramakrishna. Because their mind was in such a high state. And everything is mind made manifest. So you can make anything dance. See? But the other person just had a bunch of garbage in his mind and just revisited it when he went in there. He was thinking of everything about this woman named Rani Rashmani, went in the temple with Sri Ramakrishna, sat in front of the statue of Mother Kali. Sri Ramakrishna was worshipping, and all of a sudden he turned and slapped her. She was like a rich person. She bought the temple for them. She's the owner of the temple, and he slapped her. And so all the guards in the temple wanted to kick Ramakrishna out, take him away from the priest post and everything. And Rani Rashmani said, no, he did right. I was thinking about some court cases I'm involved in instead of thinking about the mother in front of me. And he knew that, and he slapped me. So you don't go into the temple, take all your baggage with you. You go in a prepared state of mind if you really want to fulfill the purpose for going in the temple. It's supposed to be a divine experience. So why are you bringing court cases and things? Surgeries and stuff. The doctors have the hardest time, I've found, with Vedanta. The doctors give up the path real quick. Because their babies are being born, so they start believing in the birth process. And disease are happening to the body, so they start looking at you as a body with disease. They have so much of that going on in their life that they can never see you as the Atman. And so they cannot see themselves as Atman. Sri Ramakrishna was no different. The doctors came to treat his cancer. Every one of them missed the point that they were administering to a holy man. And he tried different ways to awaken them. Dr. Sarkar and other, read it in the gospel, right? And so they were amazed by this person, but they couldn't quite get over their idea of the body being real, because to them, the body in doctoring was their God. And they had superimposed that over the Atman. Their mind was conditioned that way. So others are here, tanmatras and prana, it's a good time to bring those out. And then you have here things of lesser light, like the 5 senses and the 5 elements. Your eyes shine with a light, and your ears have a light. The physical senses are actually very powerful things. But the father of yoga says there's one problem with them. They're outgoing only. If you made contact with the tanmatras, you realize that you have 5 inner senses too, but you're shutting them off, so you can't, you dream maybe and use them, but you don't think that dream is anything but a figment of your imagination. So you're not investing it with consciousness that it's required to have. The light that's in it, you're not bringing it out. Just like a blind person can't see even though the eyes are open. So with the outer senses, it's much the same way. You can purify them to such an extent that you can actually start seeing Brahman's manifestation in everything. That's why Sri Ramakrishna was sitting there, asked him the question, how does Brahman get into the world? And he said, well, look at all these dewdrops. Doesn't the sun get into the dewdrops? So just like that, Brahman gets into everything. But it's not a thing. The rule of thumb that we've come up with in SRV, Brahman is not matter, it's not energy, and it's not thought. If you can think that far, then you can do away with false superposition, because most people are thinking, superimposing energy, matter, and thought over the energyless, matterless, thoughtless Brahman. See, they're guilty of false superimposition on all those levels. If you could just possibly think that, oh, Brahman is not those things, so then you'd start thinking, what's left? Awareness, perception, consciousness. I mean, consciousness is a little harder to convince people about because you can get knocked on the head and become unconscious. But awareness, perception, the Buddhists like to use that word, perception. Not just perception with the senses, but perception of something higher, deeper. Those things begin to be left over when you do the neti-neti process of not matter, not energy, not thought. So anything that comes at you that's made of any of those three things or a combination, therefore you neti-neti it. Not this, not this, not that. Oh, I see, that's not Brahman. But Brahman can still shine its light through them. So that's how you treat the body. The body is divine. Didn't Jesus say, a temple for the Lord? So if you're seeing it that way and you're prepared to see it that way, then the body can become that. And then it can house a great soul like a Jesus or a Buddha. But otherwise it's a great risk to take on a body. And people are doing all sorts of ignoble things with it. And suffering the karmas that come from those. So those last two, 5 senses and 5 elements, are tiny little dewdrops. You see, a little bit of Brahman gets through them. A little bit of that light of Brahman. So here I put one line from the great mantra, peace chant, Om Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamadachate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vishishtate. Every word starts with the word Purna. See, every utterance, which means full, full, full. See? So that one light shining, all shines. By its light, all is made vibrant. So that light of pure conscious awareness is full, full, full. And the emptiness that you thought it was a stage that was necessary for you to practice so that you could strip away all those false superimpositions. And once you've done that, then this whole world becomes Brahman. Like Jafar has a beautiful song about that. He goes, Jo kuch hai so tu hai, tujhse humne dil ko bataya, ek tujhko अपन पाया, एक तुझको अपन पाया, जो कुछ है सो तू है, तुझसे हमने दिल को of his beautiful song. I finally understood, O Lord, everything exists in thee. All of these light-filled things exist in Brahman. Every heart is ultimately united with thee. Nothing exists but thee. Gods, goddesses, man, woman, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, all are brought into existence by thy own inscrutable will. And what are these beings without you? They all exist in thee. Churches, temples, mosques, Kaaba, all places of worship. You fashion them and cause beings to bow down there. You have become the worshipper, the act of worship, and the place of worship. Nothing exists but thee. from the life heavens, throughout the boundless universe, and even into the dark nether regions below, wherever our souls journey, we find only Thee, for nothing exists but Thee. Matchless is Your presence, O Lord. I have found nothing which compares to it. Contemplating it, this humble singer, Jafar, has become illumined, and this simple truth has dawned upon his understanding, that nothing whatsoever exists but Thee. So that's the consummate realization of a person who's done all of that handiwork leading up to enlightenment. All the false superimposition, all the analysis, all the rationale, all the practical moves, all the yogic sadhanas, all the study of the darshanas and the philosophies, comes up with this one simple conclusion. All of this is Brahman. You're just looking at it and seeing other things. It really is kind of has a concomitant teaching to it, is that basically it's all in your mind. The mind is seeing it all as Brahman or not. So what's wrong with me when other people have seen it as Brahman with this mind, that I can't also see it as Brahman with this mind? There must be something missing. See, something rotten in Denmark. A little fishy smell in there in my mind. To go in there with some fire of purification and open up the whole business. Well, that's actually a chart that's a quick study. And that one Brahmajyoti, light of awareness, the picture of the sun in space with a flare coming out of it that they took. So all that emanation of light reflecting in all these things in the physical universe is a metaphor for the light of pure conscious awareness reflecting in everything else, from the gods and the goddesses and the Trinity and everything, as he's saying in the song, all the way down to the 5 elements of earth. One light shines. So, earth's shadows fly, heaven's light shines. As the poet Shelley said, mind is a many-colored dome that obscures the pure white light of reality. Paraphrasing him. See, so mind is a many-colored dome, so the light of Brahman from inside shines through the mind, which is a many-colored dome. The mind takes that one white radiant light and turns it into different colors or spectrums. Sort of like we were looking at this bardo. The Rinpoche, the Rinpoche said to the dead, just freshly died dead man, said, see that rainbow sheen of worlds in the distance? Try and take a birth there. Because if you can remember yourself in those worlds, then you won't have to be reborn on earth again. And if the soul can do that, then no more birth in the womb of matter for me. Only emanation from my Divine Mother. So these great souls are just emanations of light. And they have the least, as Vivekananda said, the least amount of clouds in the way of their sun. Some souls thick with clouds. Like there's no sun doesn't exist anymore. See? Other souls are free, completely free of that kind of imposition. Like Hasta Amalaka sings here beautifully. Yada surya ekip aneka charasu stirasvatyananvan vibhasya swarupa jalasu praninaha svadesheka ekam sanicha palabdis swarupahamatmam. He says in one of his beautiful 13 verses on the non-dual state, he sings, one transcendent sun becomes many, reflecting in the ripples of a lake. One indivisible being appears multiple when it animates many bodies. But relativity ever fails to divide it. Ignorance only momentarily conceals it. It is undeniably whole, which is the pervasive condition in all and in everyone. So that one sun reflecting the ripples of a lake, if your mind is the lake and it's scattered, like we were saying, then you're seeing scattered Brahman. See? You can never bring it together and see one homogeneous, pure, conscious light of awareness that is you. It's fragmented, but as soon as that wind of karma stops blowing and your mind becomes still, the lake glosses over and the sun shines in it, it's one indivisible sun. So, that's what he says. One transcendent sun becomes apparently many reflected in the ripples of the lake. So, people have scattered minds and restless minds, distracted minds, depressed minds. So, they're never going to be able to see their true nature in that condition. So, they have to do some practice and even out their mind. People with distracted minds also have distracted breathing. Or howly, they don't breathe at all. See? Whites. So you even out the breath. You practice breathing in, holding, breathing out, the same amount of time. And that actually stops your heart from beating fast, and that in turn, those two stop your mind from thinking. So there are ground up teachings you can use that the healers and those who take physical practices as their God can teach you. And so you breathe and even out everything, so that the mind will begin to even out. The in-breath is like birth, and the held breath is like life, and the expended breath is like death. See? So you're simulating all three of those when you balance the breathing process out. And so that's why everyone from the India Hatha yogis to the Zen Buddhists want you to practice breathing exercises first. Why? Because you're getting control of the prana. Yeah, and through the prana you would get a hold of the senses. Try and get a hold of the senses without that. Good luck with that. You might manage it for a day or two, but then all of a sudden your senses are wild again. But the prana that animates the senses, you know what we mean by that? There's a power in the eye to see that isn't the eye. There's a power in the ear to hear that isn't a flap of skin. See? Power in the tongue to taste that isn't the tongue or taste buds. So there's a power of prana in all those things which is animating the senses. That's where you would go if you were moving inward toward the tanmatras and so forth. You'd get a hold of the pervasive prana. There's also a prana in the mind that's upward moving. And if you're depressed, if you get a hold of that upward moving prana, you'll never be bored or depressed again. Because that prana begins to animate your mind and you're thinking of high things all the time. It's a very good technique to practice and master. Is then you'll never be bored, you'll never be depressed ever again. And your mind will always be under control and thinking of whatever you want it to think of. And you'll prefer refined things like Dharma. So 335 charts I created in that state. See? That's all I think about. It's like a painter painting a masterpiece. You see, it's all he thinks about for days. Or a sculptor. You see. He won't even eat, maybe. So that concentration is there and wants to do it perfect, and so the mind learns concentration. And then after it finishes a project, it says, hey, actually that was nice to be concentrated. I think I'll just do that all the time. I think I'll eat concentrated. I think I'll sleep concentrated. I think I'll meditate concentrated. I think I'll love concentrated. If I hate, I think I'll do that concentrated. Everything becomes concentration, which is a kind of samadhi. So that's, of course, healing and beneficial for the soul. All right, so we just have 20 minutes left, but we did finish this new chart that you were the first to see. Thank you for being my guinea pigs to reflect the teachings of Vivartapadana off of you there. And you can consider those and write to me and let me know. So I put this chart up too because in the Upanishad, where did that go? That we're studying Amritabindu Upanishad. I'm unwrapping these slokas for you, and as you remember, We unwrapped now up till sloka 13. The new slokas we took today are, verily the Atman should be known as being the same in states of wakefulness, dreaming, and dreamless sleep. For that one who has transcended the three states, there is no more rebirth. So that's where this comes in. These are the 7 Ajnana Bhumikas below and the 7 Jnana Bhumikas above. It's a very great teaching probably from Lord Vashishta, although it's been borrowed by other systems since he visited the earth thousands of years ago. So Jnana Bhumika, Bhumika means like a land, kind of. A patala would be a sunken ground, like a hell, but a bhumika would be a kind of bhumi. It's like an earth realm, and then there's a jnana bhumika, which is like a mind realm. So you're going from heaven to earth, from hell to earth to heaven in a sense, via locations, which are all in your mind, you should know. So this is the way a soul awakens according to Lord Vashishta. I'll read it to you since most of you can't see it very well. The soul starts off in Bindu Jagrad, complete ignorance. Sound familiar? Think back to your childhood. Think back to the crib. I can remember myself in the crib. I had a couple experiences in the crib. So, Bindu Jagrad, root state of ignorance, an incipient manifestation of the jiva. So there, you're totally ignorant of anything else except just your birth as a fetus, from a fetus to a baby. And you now are an individualized soul, and there's no doubt in your mind about that, not that you know anything. That's the incipient state of being a jiva, completely helpless, totally ignorant. That's Bindu Jagrad. That's the first state of lower knowledge. The second state of lower knowledge is Jagrad. The awareness of individuation occurs to you. You think, when you get big enough, you think, I'm an individual. And this happens naturally. You don't even specifically think this. Everyone's teaching you that anyway. You're an individual. You're different from them and from me and so forth. Also, inception of differentiation. You start experiencing the conditioning from other people of how different you are from everyone else. And they're not teaching you you're the same. Same soul, same body, same brain, same mind. The sameness is not there. It's all differentiation. So it's still a very low state of knowledge. The next state of knowledge is Mahat. And this is how we're describing how a soul comes out of ignorance into knowledge. So it's a very rare system. Mahat Jagrad. So Jagrad, of course, means waking or state. So this is a greater state of awakening. Progression of repeated rebirths. And believes man and the universe to be dissimilar. So it's beginning to, an inkling comes upon the mind that he's been here before. We have all been here before. We have all been here before. And then the fourth state of lower knowledge is Jagrat Swapna. Here's where the dreamer comes in. Swapna means dream. He gets sovereignty over nature, gets attached to objects, and labors under delusion. So his work is all done for self, which is a deluded way to work. You should be working for others, but you're working for yourself. That's what's going on out there. Everyone is selfish. No one is selfless. And the society is set up like that. Jobs are set up like that. Upbringing is set up like that. It's not like you can do anything about it. You're born into this. So becoming aware of it, is a blessing. Like I said when I was 19, I said, why are people doing all these things? And I don't like it here, and so forth. And I finally found out there was Vedanta, and there was the principle of Maya, and how people are deluded. And now it makes sense to me. I see they're all blindsided by Maya. Their eyes are open, but they're completely blind. That's one song in India sings. Oh soul, You walk around and see things with your eyes wide open, but you remain completely blind. Fifth state is swapna, gains objectivity, examines life's events in a dream, and remembers everything upon awakening. So then people are starting to connect the outer state with the inner, the waking with the dreaming. And this is involution, as we talked about it yesterday. There's those very same tattvas that have light in them right there. And we talked about how out of the causeless cause everything evolves, and then it involves back towards its source, if you've been taught to do that. In the West we haven't. It's all evolution and then death. Life's a bitch, then you die. Is that what they say?
Yes.
That's the conclusion they're coming up with.
That's Mac Dre.
Huh?
Mac Dre. Life's a bitch and then you die.
That's the knowledge they're being raised in. But recalling events long past and rendering the waking state lucid is the sixth of the seventh stage of lower knowledge. We went through this at a retreat recently, remember? And so we're going through it quickly here, but this is a kind of a map of the soul who is awakening to the fact that there are worlds inside of him, that everything's inside of him or her, and that there's a source to it all. And so it's going beyond just belief in God, but it's coming to faith that reality is. So this belief is not enough, it has to transform into faith. Brahman this is beyond mere belief. It is the reality without a second, the Upanishads say. So you can't just believe because then non-belief will come along. But this rock-solid faith, this is the reality beyond a second. It's beginning to dawn on his soul. So when the time he gets to the seventh stage of lower knowledge, Ajnana Bhumika, these are levels that are occurring to his mind and her mind as they awaken, then he's starting to realize all states are beset with pain and perceives all worlds in Maya. So that's the last state of lower knowledge, and then you'll be making a great transition into the Jnana Bhumikas at that place. Be good if you have a path and a teacher about there, so you can penetrate through this grunti, this knot that exists between the lower seven and the upper seven. Because once you're launched into the Jnana Bhumikas, you can see how the getting gets good. At Subhecha, the first of the seven states of higher knowledge, the soul gets attraction to the path of indifference. Oh, I saw everything in a dream, saw my lifetimes, and I saw that it was all dreamlike. I don't think I want to go in cycles anymore. I think I want to wake up. So they're waking up to something that, like a man has come to me from a land that never sleeps. My guru came to me. Now all my dreams turned into radiant meditations. So they want to take all this dream life and turn it into something actual and see their true nature behind it and bring it forward. So desires to enjoy jnana essence. Now I want higher wisdom, not lower wisdom. This is where you see some world awareness comes in. You see some people say, not interested in that anymore. I don't want to get married. No, I don't want children. I don't want to just work a 9 to 5. You see, all this stuff starts to happen. And they're starting to get interested in something that's inward and more satisfying, more fulfilling. Because nothing outside will ever fulfill you. Especially not without this kind of jnana wisdom. And finally that soul seeks guidance from an illumined soul. Then usually the guru comes to that person at that time, when they're ready, and studies the Atmagyan scriptures, like you're doing with me today. This is an Atmagyan scripture. An Upanishad has its underlying non-duality is the thread, the sutra running through it. Sutradhara, mother is the Sutradhara. She weaves this all together as pure intelligence. And then the guru can show you that. You see how this is connected into that and so forth. Put it all together and contemplate it in your mind. See, and then your mind will expand in its capacity to know Brahman. then the second stage, vicharana, happens. Inquiry into the nature of reality. So we call that also Atma Vichara. But she's just calling it vicharana. You get interested in what Brahman is, what God is. So it's not like, does God exist or does God not exist? It's like, God is existence. I've already settled that. So I'm not arguing with my mind anymore. My mind has been made one-pointed. So now all I have to do is find out what its nature is. Find out that my nature is the same as it. That will be nice. Put to death all my fears and so forth. So vicharana is a very powerful second stage of wisdom. You also contemplate the Atman. You find your teacher says, meditate upon the self meditate upon the Lord as thine own self seated in your heart. He'll tell you. So he's not telling you to meditate on this or that thing or superimpose something over another. Meditate upon the Lord as your own self. You are that. And do it in your heart. Not here yet. You're not ready for that. Do it here for a good 10, 15, 20 years until you've created a foundation in the heart where you'll never fall anymore into the worlds of ignorance and rebirth. And increase your spiritual aspirations. Increase your spiritual aspirations. Then you can graduate to Tanu Manasa. Manasa means mind, so you see that the mind is getting more free. So it frees itself from desires. And now it's not desiring things anymore. And it masters concentration. So it's now always in a state of concentration. It doesn't say like, oh, I've got some homework to do, I think I'll go concentrate. Before it thought of going to get the homework and concentrate, it was already concentrated. So it's just one state of concentration, flowing all the time. It's not causing divisions in time, in space, in objects, in souls, in beings. It's just one continuous mass of pure conscious awareness, and the mind is graduating to that. So it is giving up divisions and superimpositions and all that gradually. The clouds are becoming thinner between it and the sun, and it's seeing more of the sun. Beautiful state, Tanu Manasa. Also, it transcends the mind at times. Not all at once completely, but basically it starts to have experiences beyond the mind. For instance, deep sleep is an experience beyond the mind, but the seeds of the mind are still there. So you've gotten rid of effect, but you haven't gotten rid of cause. Cause and effect are part of Maya. So now you're not experiencing the effects of anything in deep sleep anymore. Those are wiped out. And that's why, it's beyond Jagrat and Swapna, waking and dreaming. You're getting into the deep sleep level of consciousness. And you want to awaken that too. Ramana Maharshi said this is dream number 1 and this is dream number 2. So your waking state is a dream, your dreaming state is a dream. He wasn't making any distinction between them, really. They're both dreams. So what would it be like to awaken in my awakened state? See? You have to think, this is a dream, I have to awaken here. See? I slap myself, you see. I gotta wake up here. You probably do that in dream. See? Well, I don't like this dream, I think I'm going to wake up, and there you are. You have to do that same thing in the waking state. Wake up from mundane human conventions and karmas and habits, thoughts. Wake up from that. Slough it off like a snake sloughs off its skin. And finally, it gets freedom leading to the 4th state. So that kind of freedom is the penultimate freedom at Tanu Manasa. And you get to a state which is rarely reached, called Sattvapati. And you hear that word sat means truth, of course. Or sama, like samadhi. It means it's a state of absolute equanimity. Just peaceful oneness, one level of consciousness. And it's a kind of samadhi. Peace is a kind of samadhi. So there the mind adheres to the truth. Intelligence gets illumined. One gains equality of vision, that's that sama state, equality of vision, and reaches mature detachment. And always based, of course, on earlier getting attracted to the path of indifference. Upekshana, get indifference to things. I don't care whether the world blows up or goes to hell in a handbasket. It doesn't matter, because it's an illusion, it's a dream. And all the beings on it are dreaming. The sooner the world blows up, the sooner they'll wake up from their dream. You're totally indifferent. Not to their suffering, you're just trying to help them work that out. But to the ultimate end of things, you have no doubt that all of this is a dream. And nothing done here or that can be done will help the world one bit. They're all Brahman already. Even the ignorant ones are Brahman. Even the evil ones are Atman. And they just need to have some rude awakening. 400,000 people died in a tidal wave. To the seer, that's 400,000 bubbles just popped in the ocean of consciousness. Their bubbles were egos, they weren't real. They were the ocean of consciousness, but they created a bubble to convince themselves through false superimposition that they weren't the ocean. See? That can't persist. The Bible says, that's not good. Poof, the bubble pops and they're the ocean again. So the ocean is pure conscious awareness that he's recognizing as, he or she's recognizing as they graduate these states of higher bhumikas. And so the path of indifference then will lead one to this mature detachment. If you have still concerns for the world, then it's not going to lead you to a very high enlightened state. You'll be dragged back into Maya. So Sri Ramakrishna said, never study Maya close up. Look at it from a distance. So that's indifference, isn't it? Otherwise, you're all involved in every little thing. Total emotional involvement. You see people in it just bent out of shape about things that aren't real. And sentimental about every little thing. It's like the teachings of non-duality say, get rid of your emotions. Get indifference first, and then get detachment, and then get peace of mind. Because peace of mind never comes to a stressed out person. Or a person who's vested all his energies in sentimentality, superstition, phenomena, sensationalism. You can start looking for words that people are totally invested in, that kind of thing. But where's the indifferent person? So somebody came up to the holy man and said, well, it's been really hard lately. And the holy man's just looking indifferent. And it's been really hard lately. So my mother died. And the sage goes, good. I saw that actually on a movie. Good. It's just totally uninvested in whether the mother was not real. Your suffering's not real. So it's good. Isn't it good? She was suffering, so now she's dead. Isn't it good? Even actually it's good that she died? You've seen your own mother hang around in a body suffering? Don't you want her to die, but you're too scared to say it because nobody wants that? You might be seen as callous. No, you're indifferent. It doesn't make a whit of difference. In fact, it's better if she dies. So if you're a sensitive person, it's not like callousness that's there, it's compassion. But it's also indifference to the fact that she took on a body, she had to suffer it, and she had to die. Hopefully she'll awake from that dream. And this is how she does. So you must awaken from the dream, and then you can teach her. In the scriptures it says, the best thing a son can do is to go back and teach his mother Jnana wisdom. That's in the scriptures. So you go back to your mother and you say, here, read this book. And she did, my mother. Okay, now ask questions. And she did. And now you want to teach her. Well, who's your teacher? Sri Ramakrishna. Can I also? I said, here, read the gospel. She read the gospel. Well, I'd like to take initiation. So my mother woke up. She went to her last breath with Sri Ramakrishna in her mind. So you have to go back and teach your parents higher wisdom, otherwise they're just going to come back again and you're going to have to practice indifference again. Because you can't be drugged down, you see, with them. You can't be drugged into their karma. You've got your own karma to deal with. You'd have to be a very strong soul to take on others' karma. So this is all sattvapadi state, and we've run out of time, but we can quickly outline the remaining states. A samshakti, you merge in the Atman. You merge there. It's like a hailstone falling into an ocean, they say. You see the ocean of consciousness, you're still the hailstone of the body-mind mechanism, and you're falling towards it with trepidation, but you know that it's the right thing, and you just hit it, and you just dissolve in it. And nobody can come back and tell you what that's like. The seers come back out of that and try and tell you, oh, I felt like I and my father are one. See? Or I felt like birds have nests, foxes have holes, but I didn't have any place on earth. They can tell you in words what they experienced when their hailstone dissolved. But nobody's listening, you see. Or they're not listening deep enough. And if they listen, they're not practicing. Or they're creating false superimpositions. Clouds are getting thicker in front of the sun. Some people hear the truth and they actually get worse. Don't ask me how. They run the other direction when you tell them something truthful. Actually, it's true, as Sri Ramakrishna said, most people don't even think of God even by accident. It's a statement he made. It's actually hilarious in a morose kind of way. Most people don't even think about their true nature by accident. That's how far gone they are in Maya. Well, after you merge in Atman, you attain the certitude of non-duality. I and my Father are one is the certitude of non-duality. You know that you're one with the Father. Nobody can take that away from you ever again. And that's absolute certainty that you have that realization. It's not just an insight. You're now posited in non-duality. You are the ocean of consciousness, and nobody can tell you different. And it doesn't matter if you believe Jesus is the only way or not. You've gone beyond all Jesuses, and you yourself are your own Savior. In fact, beyond Savior, you're now your own liberator. And just like he became one and said, "Be thee perfect as thy Father in heaven is perfect," you too have become one and seen yourself as your Father in heaven is perfect. So that's certitude of non-duality. It's a state of consciousness people occupy. These are states of awareness of the mind until mind is no more. So it's a very beautiful system to study. We do a whole retreat on this. We did it recently. We took a whole day on this chart. Sees Brahman in everything and goes beyond, I skipped, transcends the gunas and realizes Jivan Mukti, my teacher say. You must become a Jivan Mukti, he would say from the podium, with his Hindu accent. So Jivan Mukti is liberated being. You must become free in this very life. Don't leave it towards death or the bardos or anything. The clouds may thicken while you're away. It's a clear day. See, I want to do it now while the getting's good. And then Padartha Bhavana is the penultimate state of wisdom. Identifies with consciousness alone. So there's that idea of identifying not with body. Maybe you can associate, but you're identifying with consciousness alone. Also, sees Brahman in all and goes beyond attainments. Attainments were badges, were things that helped you, knowledge and so forth. And all of a sudden, it's like Krishna in the Gita saying to Arjuna, you must know that knowledge can turn into an evil if it doesn't lead to truth. Think about it, people ending up with vast stores of knowledge, which is actually helping them lead very happy, good lives, wealth, and so forth. But it never ends in the truth of the matter, that the world's unreal, that Brahman's the only reality, and so forth and so on. They never get these key points. realize. So they stay at this kind of level of virtue and goodness and so forth, or very knowledgeable. And they die very knowledgeable. But it never led them to the truth of non-duality. So he says to Arjuna, that's all knowledge. You must know that there's the presence of evil in knowledge if it doesn't lead to truth. Very well put. Finally, he arrives at Turiya, which means the fourth state. Fourth state means beyond waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. You arrive beyond the A, U, and M to the little Shvara up there. You see on the Om sign, the one-eyed smile, I call it. You have a one eye, then you're very blissful, not just happy. At that state, you abide in the self, you rest in the disembodied liberation, and you enter into immersion. Now, the difference that Father of Yoga points out between merging and immersion is good. It can be in a state of absorption. That means you're getting absorbed, right? But once you've actually been immersed, then you are absorbed. Your hailstone is completely free of the idea that it ever was a hailstone. But as it gets dissolved, it's still thinking, I'm a hailstone losing my form, see? So it's a very subtle difference, but nonetheless the soul is completely divested now of anything but consciousness because it learned that it was only consciousness. And consciousness is all and in everything, like Jafar's beautiful song we just sang. I realize now from heavens to earth to hells and all the worlds and all the levels of consciousness that everything exists in Thee, O Lord. And I am that. So we've worked our way then in the Amritabindu Upanishad to Sloka 13, and I'll mark this today in my book, say, start here in May. So if you come back in my next visit, we will start there, and there's probably another, 8 or so slokas left before we finish this Upanishad. And it's just one of the small Upanishads buried in the great scriptures of India. We're very fortunate to be able to have it given to us by the Ramakrishna order and sit here and bring it out and talk about it, because nobody's doing that. Very few people are doing that in this whole world. So we're getting a little Amrit, nectar, bindu, drop from the wisdom mind of that rishi when we take it apart and study it like this. So here, then, let's end with a chant. Om Tatsnayo, Om Tatsnayo, Ravrinni Mahe, Gatong Yagyaya, Gatong Ye Nupataye, Daivi Swastarastu Naha, Swastir Manusebhyaha, Urdvam Jigatu Besajam, Sangno Astu Dvipade Sang Chatushpate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we make a profound offering of the small self into the great self. May we delight in this offering, and may we always revere the Lord and Mother of all sacrifices. May the divine blessings be upon us. May peace come into the entire human race. May healing, well-being, and prosperity then also abide among us. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. So wonderful to